Okay, wait. Say that again? You're telling me that you can guess how big someone's vocabulary is just by knowing if they read for fun?
Pretty much, yeah. It's one of the strongest predictors out there.
That feels almost unfair. Like, what about people who just talk a lot? People who watch a ton of shows?
Talking and watching help for sure, but there's something reading does that almost nothing else does. And once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Okay, now you have to explain that. You can't just drop that and move on.
I will, I promise. But first...
Oh, here we go.
Welcome to English Without Borders.
I'm Sophia.
I'm Jake, and today we're talking about something a lot of English learners either love or secretly avoid.
Guilty. I avoid it.
Reading in English.
Yeah, that's the one.
So today's episode is called The Secret Power of Reading, and I actually think this is one of the most underrated tools for learning English, like genuinely underrated.
Okay, but can I be honest?
Always.
When people tell me just read more, it feels like the most boring advice ever. Everyone says it. Nobody explains why it actually works.
That's exactly why we're doing this episode, because just read more is terrible advice on its own. But once you understand what's actually happening in your brain when you read, it completely changes how you think about it.
Okay, I'm listening. Why does reading matter so much? Like, more than speaking practice, more than watching movies?
So here's the thing. When you're having a conversation or watching a show, words go by fast. You catch the general meaning and you move on. Your brain doesn't have time to notice details.
Right, because you're just trying to keep up.
Exactly. But reading is different. Reading gives your brain time. You see a word, you see it again 3 pages later, you see it in a slightly different sentence, and eventually your brain quietly builds a full picture of what that word really means. Not just the dictionary definition, but how it's actually used.
Wait, so it's not really about learning new words. It's about deepening the words you already sort of know?
Both, actually. But you just touched on something really important. A lot of learners think vocabulary is, I know this word or I don't. But it's actually a scale.
A scale?
Yeah. Think about the word run. You know that word, right?
Obviously. I run, you run, we run.
Okay, but what about run a business, run a fever, running late in the long run?
Oh no.
See, you knew the word run, but not really.
Okay, that's humbling.
And here's the wild part. You didn't learn all those meanings of run from a vocabulary list, did you?
No, definitely not.
You probably picked them up gradually from hearing and reading them in context over and over in different situations.
Huh. So reading is basically training your brain to notice patterns without even trying?
That's a great way to put it. Reading quietly builds intuition. It's not memorizing, it's absorbing.
Okay, but here's my honest confession. Whenever I try to read something in English, like a real book, not a textbook, I get stuck on like page 2. There's always some word I don't know and I stop to look it up and then I lose the whole flow of the story.
Okay, this is huge. This is probably the #1 reason people give up on reading.
See, I knew I wasn't alone.
You're definitely not. And here's something that might surprise you. That habit of stopping for every single word is actually working against you.
Wait, really? I thought I was being responsible, like a good student.
I get why it feels that way, but think about it from the story's perspective. If you stop every 10 seconds to check a dictionary, what happens to your understanding of the actual story?
It falls apart. Yeah, that's literally what happens to me. By the time I finish the chapter, I don't even remember what happened.
Exactly. So here's a rule I give all my students, and it sounds almost too simple. If you understand the general meaning of the sentence, keep reading.
Even if there's a word you don't know?
Even then. Especially then.
But how do I learn the word if I don't stop?
This is where it gets interesting. You'll probably see that word again, later in the book, or in a different book, or in a conversation. And each time you see it, your brain adds a little more information about what it means.
So instead of learning it instantly, I learn it slowly over multiple encounters?
Right. And that kind of learning sticks way better than looking something up once and forgetting it an hour later.
Wait, that actually explains something. I remember reading this fantasy novel in English a couple years ago, and there was this word grim. I didn't know it, I just kept reading. And by like chapter 5, I somehow just knew what it meant without ever looking it up.
That is literally the exact process we're talking about.
I never realized that was a real learning method. I thought I just got lucky.
Nope. That's your brain doing exactly what it's designed to do, building meaning from context, the same way you learned your first language as a kid.
Wait, we learned our first language that way too?
Think about it. Nobody handed you a vocabulary list before you learned to talk. You heard words over and over in different situations, and your brain figured out the pattern.
Oh my gosh, that's true. I never made that connection.
And that's actually one of the biggest secrets about reading. It's the closest thing to natural language learning that you can do as an adult.
Okay, but I want to push back a little.
Go for it.
What about grammar? Like, doesn't reading only help with vocabulary? Grammar feels like a completely separate thing that I have to study with rules and charts.
This is where a lot of learners get surprised. Reading might actually be one of the best ways to learn grammar, and I'd argue it's better than studying grammar rules alone.
Wait, how? Grammar has actual rules, structure, logic.
Sure, but here's the problem with only studying grammar rules. You learn the rule in isolation, and then your brain has to consciously remember it every time you speak. That's slow and honestly kind of exhausting.
Oh, I know that feeling. Like when I'm speaking and I'm mentally checking, wait, do I need the past tense here? Do I need have or had?
Exactly. That's your brain applying a rule manually. But when you read a lot, you're seeing correct grammar hundreds of times in real sentences, in real context. Eventually, your brain doesn't need to check the rule anymore. It just knows what sounds right.
Because it's seen the pattern so many times.
Right. It becomes intuition instead of memory, and that's a completely different level of fluency.
Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense. But can I admit something a little embarrassing?
Of course.
Sometimes when I read something and it sounds strange to me, I have literally no idea if it's wrong or if it's just a different way of saying something. Like, I can't tell the difference between a mistake and just an unusual sentence.
That's such a normal feeling, and it actually shows you're paying attention. Can you give me an example?
Okay, I read this sentence once, I've been meaning to call you. And I remember thinking, wait, that sounds weird. Shouldn't it be, I meant to call you?
Oh, that's such a good example. Okay, so both are correct, but they mean slightly different things.
See, this is exactly what confuses me.
I meant to call you. That's just a simple past action. You had an intention in the past. That's it. Done.
Okay.
But I've been meaning to call you. That's present perfect continuous. It means the intention has continued from the past up until now. It's ongoing.
Oh, so it's like, I meant to call you sounds finished. But I've been meaning to call you sounds like it's still bothering me, still on my mind?
Exactly right. Native speakers use I've been meaning to constantly in real life. It's actually a super common expression.
Wait, give me an example.
I've been meaning to clean my apartment. I've been meaning to text her back. I've been meaning to start exercising.
Oh my gosh, I say that in my head about exercising literally every single day.
See? Now you have the actual English for that exact feeling.
Okay, that's a genuinely useful phrase. I'm stealing that.
And notice, you didn't learn that from a grammar textbook just now. You learned it because you noticed something confusing while reading, and we talked through it in context.
Oh, wow. You're right. This whole conversation is basically what you were describing a minute ago.
Exactly. That's the secret power of reading in action.
Okay, so let's get practical, because I think a lot of listeners are thinking exactly what I was thinking. Okay, I want to read more, but what do I even read? Everything feels either too easy or way too hard.
This is such an important question, and honestly, it's where most people go wrong.
How so?
They pick something way too difficult right at the beginning. Like they decide, I'm going to improve my English. And then they go straight for a 500-page classic novel from the 1800s.
Oh no, is that a personal example?
It might be. Let's just say I once tried to read Charles Dickens as my very first English novel, and I gave up by page 10.
Wait, you struggled with English too?
Of course. I wasn't born speaking perfect English either. I had to learn all of this the hard way.
Okay, that actually makes me feel so much better.
The truth is, choosing the right book matters way more than people realize. There's actually a general guideline teachers use. You want to understand about 95% of the words on the page without stopping.
95%? That's really specific.
Here's the logic. If you understand 95%, that remaining 5%, the unfamiliar words, you can usually guess their meaning from context. That's the sweet spot for learning.
And if it's harder than that?
If you're understanding like 70%, you're not really reading for enjoyment anymore. You're decoding. It becomes frustrating and most people just quit.
Okay, that's literally been my exact problem this whole time. I keep picking books that are too advanced, then I feel bad about myself, and then I give up.
You're definitely not alone there. So here's a tip. Start with something built for learners, like graded readers. They're books specifically written with simpler vocabulary for different levels.
Wait, isn't that kind of cheating?
Not at all. Think of it like training wheels. Nobody starts riding a bike on a mountain trail.
Okay, fair point.
And here's something that surprises people. You can also just read things you already love, but in English. If you love mystery novels, read a simple mystery. If you love romance, read a romance novel written in clear, modern English.
Oh, that's smart. Because then you're motivated by the story, not just the language.
Exactly. The story pulls you forward. And when you're curious what happens next, you naturally push through unfamiliar words instead of giving up.
Okay, wait. I have to tell you a story.
Please.
So I actually did this by accident without even realizing it was a technique. A few years ago, I was completely obsessed with this one TV show, and they released a companion book, kind of a spin-off story. And I read the whole thing in English in like 4 days.
Wait, 4 days? That's fast for a learner.
I know, but I didn't even notice it was hard. I was so curious about the characters that I just kept going.
See, that's the perfect example of what we're talking about. You weren't studying, you were just reading, and your English improved as a side effect.
I never thought about it that way, but you're totally right. That was honestly one of the biggest jumps in my English ever, and I never connected it to reading practice. I just thought I got lucky with a good book.
This actually connects to something really important, the difference between reading for study and reading for pleasure. A lot of learners think real learning has to feel difficult and serious. But some of the most powerful learning happens when you're just enjoying yourself and not even thinking about grammar.
Okay, that is honestly kind of a relief to hear.
It should be, because here's something else people don't expect. Reading for pleasure actually improves your listening and speaking too, even though you're not saying a single word out loud.
Wait, how does silent reading help speaking?
Great question. So when you read a lot, you're building what we call inner voice fluency. You start hearing sentences in your head in a natural rhythm, with natural word order. And over time, That rhythm starts showing up when you actually speak.
Oh, that's interesting. Like your brain gets used to the shape of English sentences?
Exactly. Native English has a certain rhythm, certain patterns of stress and flow. And reading, especially reading dialogue in novels, quietly trains your brain to recognize that rhythm.
Wait, dialogue specifically? Not just any text?
Yeah, this is actually a really underrated tip. If you want your spoken English to sound more natural, read books with a lot of dialogue. Novels, not textbooks. Because dialogue shows you how people actually talk, with contractions, with casual expressions, with realistic sentence structure.
Give me an example of that difference.
Okay, so a textbook might say, I do not know where she is. Very formal, very correct.
Right, very grammar book.
But in a novel, a character might say, I don't know where she went.
Oh, don't know. I feel like I hear that constantly in real conversations, but I never see it written down anywhere official.
Exactly, because it's not official English, but it's real English. And that's exactly what novels give you access to, the version of English people actually use.
Okay, wait, this is making me want to completely change how I read.
In what way?
I think I've always read like a student trying to pass a test. Very serious, very focused on being correct. But you're describing something more like reading as a window into how people actually talk.
That's such a perfect way to describe it. And once you start seeing reading that way, it stops feeling like homework.
Okay, but let's talk about something a little more practical, because I think listeners want a real plan. Like, how much should someone actually read? Every day? Once a week?
Honestly, consistency matters way more than quantity. I'd rather someone read for 15 minutes every day than 2 hours once a week.
Why is that?
Because language learning is like exercise. Your brain needs regular, small exposure to keep building those patterns we talked about. If you read once a week for 2 hours, your brain sort of resets in between. But if you read a little every single day, you're constantly reinforcing what you've already learned.
That's so much less intimidating than what I imagined. I always thought I needed to read, like, entire chapters at a time to make progress.
Nope. 15, 20 minutes a day is genuinely enough to see real improvement over a few months.
Okay, wait, here's something I'm curious about. What about reading news articles or blog posts instead of novels? Does that count?
It absolutely counts, and it's actually a great option for learners who prefer nonfiction or who want to learn more practical, everyday vocabulary.
Is there a difference in what you learn from news versus novels?
Definitely. News articles are great for formal vocabulary, current events, and more structured sentences. Novels are better for natural conversation, emotion, and everyday expressions. Honestly, mixing both is ideal.
Okay, that makes sense. Variety.
Exactly. And here's something fun. You can even read things that don't feel like learning at all. Comics, graphic novels, even the subtitles of a show you're rewatching.
Wait, subtitles count as reading?
Totally. In fact, that's a really underrated method. Watch a show with English subtitles in English audio. Your eyes read the words at the same moment your ears hear them.
Oh, that's smart, because it connects the sound of the word to the spelling of the word at the same time.
Exactly. And that combination is incredibly powerful for pronunciation, too.
Wait, how does reading help pronunciation? Those feel like totally separate skills.
This is actually a fascinating point. A lot of learners mispronounce words simply because they only ever saw them written down and never heard them out loud, or vice versa.
Oh my gosh. Can I confess something embarrassing?
Always.
For years, I read the word colonel in books and always pronounced it in my head as colonel. Like exactly how it's spelled.
Okay, that's a great one because the actual pronunciation is kernel. Like, it sounds exactly like the word for corn kernel.
I know. I found that out in real life out loud in front of people and I was mortified.
See, that's such a perfect example of why combining reading with listening matters so much. If you'd heard that word spoken while reading it, you never would have made that mistake.
This episode is very healing for my past trauma, honestly.
We've all got a kernel story. Mine was the word epitome. I read that word probably 50 times in books before I ever heard someone say it out loud.
How did you think it was pronounced?
I genuinely thought it was epitome. Like 3 syllables, sounds exactly how it looks.
And it's actually...
Epitome. 4 syllables. Completely different stress.
Wait, that's such a trap word.
It really is. And I said it wrong confidently in a university presentation.
No.
Yes, in front of 30 people. Nobody corrected me either. They just quietly let me keep going.
That is somehow worse.
It taught me an important lesson, though. Reading alone isn't enough. You need to combine it with listening, so your brain connects the written word to the actual sound.
Okay, that's such good advice, and honestly, such a relatable mistake. I think a lot of our listeners have their own version of a kernel story.
I'd genuinely love to hear those, actually. If you're listening right now, think about it for a second. Is there a word you learned from reading but completely mispronounced the first time you said it out loud?
Yeah, let us know. That's such a fun, very human mistake to make.
It really shows something important, too. Mistakes like that aren't failures. They're proof that you're actually engaging with the language, reading real content, pushing your limits a little.
Okay, I want to bring up one more thing, because I think some listeners might be wondering this. What if reading in English feels boring? Like, what if someone tries all of this and it just doesn't click for them?
That's such an honest question. And I think the answer is change what you're reading, not whether you read at all.
What do you mean?
A lot of people think reading only means novels. But if you love cooking, read recipes and food blogs in English. If you love sports, read match reports and player interviews. If you love video games, read game reviews or forums.
Oh, that's such a good point. The content matters just as much as the method.
Exactly. If the topic interests you, your brain naturally wants to keep going, even when it's a little difficult. But if the topic bores you, even simple English will feel exhausting.
Okay, that's actually really freeing. Because I always assumed real reading practice had to be literature, serious books.
Nope. Read what makes you curious. That curiosity is doing half the learning work for you.
Okay, I think I want to try something new after this conversation. I think I'm going to find a mystery novel, something simple, and actually commit to finishing it instead of stopping every time I see a tricky word.
I love that. And here's a tip for that specific plan. Keep a tiny notebook or a notes app and just jot down words you see repeatedly. Not every unknown word, just the ones that keep showing up.
Why only the repeated ones?
Because if a word appears multiple times in the same book, it's probably common enough to be worth learning on purpose. But a word that appears once and never again, honestly, you can usually let that one go.
Oh, that takes so much pressure off. I always felt like I had to catch every single word.
And that pressure is exactly what makes reading feel exhausting instead of enjoyable. Let some words go. Trust that your brain will pick up the important ones naturally the more you read.
Okay, I think this whole episode has honestly changed how I think about reading. I came into this thinking it was just, a nice suggestion teachers give, but it sounds like it's actually doing something much deeper.
It really is. Reading quietly trains vocabulary, grammar intuition, natural rhythm, even pronunciation, all at the same time, without ever feeling like traditional studying.
And the secret is just not stopping, letting the story pull you forward.
Exactly.
Choose something you enjoy, understand most of it, let the unfamiliar parts go, and trust the process.
Okay, so before we wrap up, what's the one thing you want listeners to actually remember from this episode?
I'd say this. You don't need to read something difficult to make progress. You need to read something you actually want to keep reading. That's the real secret.
I love that. Okay, everyone listening, here's a little challenge for this week. Find something, a book, an article, even a comic, in English about a topic you genuinely love. And read a little bit of it every day, just 15 minutes.
And notice what happens. Notice the words that keep repeating. Notice sentences that suddenly feel natural, even if you can't explain the grammar rule behind them.
And if you mispronounce a word out loud one day, just remember,
You're in good company. Colonel.
epitome.
We've all been there.
Thank you so much for listening to English Without Borders. If this episode helped you see reading in a new way, please subscribe and share it with someone who's learning English too.
And we'll see you next time for another conversation.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.